On November 28, 2008, the Valley Stream Walmart in Long Island opened its doors to thousands of eager shoppers seeking Black Friday deals. The morning started as another typical shopping day. Within minutes, it became a tragedy when 34-year-old Jidimitai Damour, a temporary employee, was trampled to death in less than 1 minute by an uncontrollable crowd. Jidimitai Damour, a 34-year-old immigrant from Jamaica, Queens, had only recently joined Walmart as a seasonal employee after losing his job during the 2008 economic downturn. He stood 6 feet 5 inches tall, weighing nearly 480 pounds, and had a gentle demeanor that earned him the nickname Jidred among his co-workers, owing to his distinct dreadlocks. His physical stature made him stand out, but his aspirations were even more impressive. He had dreams of becoming a teacher, a path that was tragically cut short. As Black Friday approached, Walmart launched its Blitz Friday marketing campaign, promising deeply discounted electronics, which drew massive crowds. By midnight, hundreds of shoppers had gathered outside the store, waiting for the doors to open. By 3 a.m., the crowd swelled to nearly 2,000 people. Inside, managers prepared for the rush, setting up barricades and assigning larger employees, including Damour, to brace the vestibule doors. However, Damour, having no formal training in crowd control, was put in a position that proved to be fatal. At 5:03 a.m., just after the doors were scheduled to open, the pressure from the crowd became overwhelming. The glass doors shattered under the weight of the surge, and shoppers flooded into the store. Damour, standing near the entrance, was knocked to the ground. He warned the crowd to step back, but the chaos escalated within seconds. The stampede of bodies moved forward relentlessly, trampling over him as they pushed to grab the best deals. As Damour fell, his massive frame offered little protection from the crush of shoppers. Witnesses later reported that some shoppers stepped over him as they rushed in, oblivious or indifferent to his plight. In the moments that followed, Damour was suffocated by the weight of the crowd, unable to breathe under the pressure. Employees, struggling to reach him, were impeded by the wave of people flooding in. Frantic efforts to resuscitate him failed. Damour was pronounced dead by 6:03 a.m., just 1 hour after the store opened. The official cause of death was asphyxiation. The immediate response was one of confusion and disbelief. Emergency responders arrived on the scene to find the store still buzzing with activity as shoppers continued to grab discounted items. Some customers, having witnessed the chaos, continued to shop, oblivious to the severity of the situation. It was only after significant delay that the authorities were able to secure the area. The magnitude of the incident prompted public outcry and forced people to question the corporate responsibility of retailers like Walmart in managing such large crowds. The Nassau County Police Department launched an investigation into the death, describing the scene as complete chaos. Detective Lieutenant Michael Fleming pointed out the store's failure to implement adequate security measures, labeling the situation as foreseeable. Surveillance footage from inside the store confirmed the extent of the chaos and showed Damour being trampled as hundreds of shoppers rushed forward. The investigation continued, but no individuals were ever identified or charged in connection with the incident. In December 2008, Damour's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Walmart, accusing the company of negligence in planning and executing the Black Friday sale. The lawsuit highlighted Walmart's aggressive marketing campaign, which had incited the crowd's behavior. In May 2009, the company reached a settlement with Nassau County prosecutors, agreeing to pay nearly $2 million to avoid criminal charges. The company also pledged to adopt improved crowd control measures for future sales events. Meanwhile, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, fined Walmart $7,000 for failing to provide a safe working environment. The fine was later contested by the company, which spent millions in legal fees to dispute it. By 2013, the fine had not been paid, even though the court's ruling determined that the incident had been preventable. On November 28, 2014, Ashley Harris was preparing for Black Friday. As the assistant manager of American Eagle at Hewlin Mall in Fort Worth, Texas, Ashley had worked tirelessly the night before, making sure the store was set for the huge rush. It was a grueling task, but Ashley was dedicated. She'd spent years in retail, and she was known for being hardworking and loyal to the company. By the early morning hours of Black Friday, she was ready to rest, having caught up with a friend until about 5 a.m. Two of her former co-workers, Carter Cervantes and her boyfriend, Clarence Mallory, were already on their way to her apartment, armed and determined to kill her. Ashley had no idea that her former colleagues, both fired from their positions at the store months earlier, were plotting revenge. Their motive was simple. Ashley had reported them for theft. Back in August 2014, during Texas's sales tax holiday weekend, a burglar had broken into the American Eagle store and stolen $18,000 from the safe. Surveillance footage revealed something damning. Carter had been seen leaving a door unlocked, which led investigators to believe she played a role in the theft. Ashley, as the assistant manager and responsible for store security, had reported the findings. She had done what was right, what any good manager would do, but Carter and Clarence weren't pleased. They felt betrayed. Their theft was exposed, and as a result, they were both fired. Carter, who had been Ashley's co-worker and assistant manager at the time, took the firing personally. According to investigators, she blamed Ashley for her loss of job, identity, and income. The humiliation of being held accountable for their actions consumed them both. Carter and Clarence's anger festered over the next 3 months as they planned their revenge. The Black Friday weekend, when Ashley would be exhausted and at her most vulnerable, became the perfect opportunity. They wanted to rob her and make her pay for exposing them. The night before Ashley's death, she was finalizing the store's preparations for Black Friday. She had worked hard to ensure everything was in place, and she felt a sense of relief once she was done. After her friend left around 5 a.m., Ashley probably tried to get some sleep before the chaos of the day ahead. While she rested, Carter and Clarence were already en route to her apartment, armed with a plan that would end her life. When they arrived, Ashley likely recognized them as former co-workers. There was no forced entry. Carter and Clarence were likely let in by Ashley herself. What happened next was brutal. Carter and Clarence attacked her. They beat her with a gun, pistol whipping her head and face, then strangled her. Ashley fought back, but they overpowered her. They bound her hands and feet with duct tape, leaving her struggling for air as they continued their assault. Around 7:30 a.m., a downstairs neighbor heard the commotion, the screams, the struggle, followed by a thud, labored breathing, and then the sound of a door slamming. The neighbor looked outside and saw Carter's distinctive black Infiniti speeding away from the complex. Ashley, her life taken in her own bedroom, was left behind. Once Ashley was dead, Carter and Clarence weren't finished. They set her body on fire, hoping to destroy any evidence. They poured rubbing alcohol on her body and set the flames. However, the fire didn't spread as they hoped, and the damage was contained. The fire had served its purpose to cover up the murder, but didn't fully erase the evidence of the brutality they had committed. At around 8 a.m., a 911 call alerted the authorities to the fire at Ashley's apartment. When firefighters arrived, they discovered Ashley's partially burned body, bound and covered in blood. The fire department immediately transformed the response from a simple fire call to a full homicide investigation. They found Ashley's keys missing, keys to her apartment, her car, and the American Eagle store. The connection to the robbery was made clear. Ashley had always kept her keys on the kitchen counter, and her co-workers, Carter and Clarence, had stolen them in order to rob the store after Black Friday. Investigators also learned of the august theft and Ashley's role in reporting it. The motive for Ashley's murder was now undeniable: revenge and greed. Detectives quickly focused their investigation on Carter and Clarence. Surveillance footage from the day after the murder showed Carter attempting to use Ashley's stolen keys to break into the American Eagle store. She was unaware that management had already changed the locks. This attempt to rob the store just one day after Ashley's murder solidified the theory. Ashley had been killed so that Carter and Clarence could steal the Black Friday earnings. On December 4th, 2014, arrest warrants were issued for Carter and Clarence. Inside their apartment, police found the murder kit Carter had purchased just days before, the receipt for duct tape, rope, gloves, shovels, and a tarp. Blood evidence found in Clarence's car matched Ashley's DNA. Carter was the mastermind behind the plot, and Clarence had carried out the violent actions. They had planned every detail, even scouting a gravesite for Ashley's body in Abilene, Texas. Carter Cervantes was convicted of capital murder in 2016 and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Clarence Mallory was convicted the following year and received the same sentence. The case was one of brutality, greed, and revenge. a reminder of how a single act of betrayal can lead to an unspeakable tragedy. On the evening of November 28, 2014, Black Friday, the holiday lights along Michigan Avenue in Chicago shone brightly, illuminating the crowded streets as shoppers flocked to stores. Inside the Nordstrom department store, employees prepared for the evening's crowds. Among them was 22-year-old Nadia Ezeldine, a recent law graduate working at Nordstrom to support her continued education. Nadia was full of ambition and hope, unaware that the night would take a tragic turn. Nadia had worked hard to get where she was. She was intelligent, kind-hearted, and committed to her work and studies. She had a bright future ahead of her. That evening, her family was planning a surprise birthday celebration for her. Her 22nd birthday should have been a moment of joy, yet it was marked by an unbearable tragedy. Nadia's ex-boyfriend, Marcus D., had been stalking her for nearly a year. Police had been involved in earlier incidents, but his obsessive behavior went unchecked. Around 8:30 p.m. on Black Friday, Marcus entered the Nordstrom store, heading to the accessories department where Nadia worked. Surveillance footage captured the moment he approached her, and witnesses reported the argument between them escalating rapidly. Marcus then pulled a .45 caliber handgun and shot Nadia in the head. The store immediately descended into chaos. Shoppers fled, some seeking shelter in the back of the store while others crouched down to hide. After shooting Nadia, Marcus turned the gun on himself, committing suicide in front of horrified witnesses. Nadia was rushed to Northwestern Memorial Hospital in critical condition. Her family, who had planned to celebrate her birthday, now waited anxiously for any sign of hope. But hours later, doctors confirmed that Nadia had no brain activity. By the afternoon of November 29th, she was removed from life support. Her family, shattered, now faced the unimaginable. Nadia's future, full of promise and potential, had been stolen. The investigation into Nadia's death revealed it to be a case of domestic violence. Marcus D. had repeatedly stalked and harassed Nadia since their breakup, but her attempts to secure legal protection failed. Marcus's access to a firearm, obtained through a third party, added another layer of complexity to the case. The gun had been purchased by Nina Dones, who falsely reported it as stolen. Dones was initially charged but was later exonerated. The gun, however, had been intended for Marcus, a man prohibited from owning firearms. Nadia's death cast a harsh light on the systemic failures in protecting victims of intimate partner violence. Multiple police reports, restraining orders, and other legal measures had been filed, yet Marcus remained a threat. His history of stalking, combined with his access to firearms, made him a danger that was never fully addressed. The murder was compounded by its tragic timing. She was shot on the evening of her birthday, a day meant for celebration. Her family had flown in, eager to surprise her, but instead found themselves preparing for a funeral. The juxtaposition of celebration and loss added to the heartache, making the violence all the more senseless. On November 28, 2008, at a Toys R Us in Palm Desert, California, the excitement of Black Friday shopping transformed into chaos and tragedy within minutes. A typical morning of toy hunting for holiday gifts escalated into a deadly gun battle, leaving 2 men dead and dozens of shoppers traumatized. The violence was sparked by an argument between 2 women, a moment of conflict that ignited a chain of events no one could have predicted. Alejandro Moreno, 39, a man with a violent criminal history, and Juan Mesa, 28, a gang member with a record of firearm offenses, both walked into the crowded toy store that morning carrying loaded handguns. Both were convicted felons prohibited from carrying weapons, yet they entered the store armed, setting the stage for a deadly confrontation. Both men were familiar with violence and the criminal justice system. Moreno had a history of domestic abuse, and Mesa sported a tattoo indicating his gang affiliation. The morning had begun like any other Black Friday. Shoppers rushed through aisles, eager to snatch up the best deals on toys and electronics. By 11:30 a.m., the initial rush had calmed, and shoppers methodically checked items off their lists. Among them were Moreno and Mesa, accompanied by 2 women. The tension, however, was rising. The confrontation between the women in the checkout area would soon escalate into a deadly fight, one that would change the course of the day forever. The altercation began innocently enough, a disagreement between 2 women, neither of whom appeared to be shopping. The situation quickly escalated into violence. One woman attacked the other, and blood began to flow as punches were thrown. Witnesses watched in shock as store employees moved toward the scene. It was at this moment that Alejandro Moreno, standing nearby, made the first move, pulling out his handgun in an attempt to intimidate those involved. His presence with the weapon created a critical shift in the situation, but it was Juan Meza who would escalate matters further. As the argument between the women continued, Meza drew his own firearm and pointed it at Moreno. However, in a critical mistake, Meza failed to cock his weapon, giving Moreno time to react. Moreno, realizing the danger, attempted to flee but was blocked by shoppers in the aisle. The shooting began as Meza fired first, chasing Moreno toward the electronics section. Bullets flew over terrified shoppers as chaos erupted. Joan Barrick, a witness, described the scene as a terrifying moment of uncertainty, saying, "If I'm going to die, I need to make peace." The gunfight lasted only 60 seconds, but it was enough to leave a lasting impact. As Moreno and Meza exchanged fire, the store transformed into a war zone. Shoppers ducked for cover, some hiding behind shelves or in bathrooms, while others fled in panic. Children were shielded by their parents, and one witness even pretended to be dead to avoid getting shot. By the time the shooting stopped, both men lay dead near the store's front registers. The store was left in chaos, with abandoned shopping carts scattered throughout the aisles. When police arrived just minutes after the shooting, they found two men lying dead in a store filled with panicked customers. Investigators quickly identified the firearms found near their bodies. The confrontation had escalated in full public view, but the investigation focused on the two deceased men. There was no immediate mention of the women involved in the altercation that led to the violence. Authorities, including Riverside County Sheriff's deputies, later confirmed that both Moreno and Meza were prohibited from carrying weapons, but no charges were brought against the women who had started the altercation. In the aftermath of the shooting, Toys R Us issued a public statement expressing outrage at the violence, but distancing itself from any responsibility. The company's statement suggested that the altercation was the result of a personal dispute, not related to the store's Black Friday sales. While the store reopened the following day, it was clear that the impact on the employees and the community was far from over. Toys R Us implemented a nationwide no firearms policy, though this policy was unlikely to prevent future incidents like this, considering the shooter's illegal possession of weapons.